In Him, all families are blessed. Join our discussion on Fabric of Family.
It was an ordinary day. And on this ordinary day, people were going about doing ordinary things, laughing, talking, eating, drinking, just relaxing. There was no forewarning or any hint of evidence that suggested that this day would be any different than any other day that had gone before them. There was a good man on that day, one who loved God, was upright, and you might look at his life and say, I can't think of a more godly man than him. He was a loving man. He loved those who were around him and tried to look out for their best spiritual interests. And this man, Job, tried to the best of his ability to live in accordance with God's holy word. But you know, from the first chapter of the book of Job, we're reminded that life can take a 180-degree turn. And it can change even within the blink of an eye. For as Job is going about doing these ordinary things on this ordinary day, a servant rushes in. Job, your oxen and donkeys, they're all gone. The Sabaeans, they came and they stole them all and murdered your servants, and I am the only one who escaped. And before he could even finish his statement, another servant rushes in and says, Job, fire fell down from the sky and destroyed your sheep and the servants who cared for your sheep, and I am the only one who escaped. And before he could even finish his statement, another servant rushes in and says, Job, those Chaldeans, they've come and they've stolen your camels and they've murdered your servants, and I'm the only one to make it back alive. And before he could tell Job any more, yet another servant rushes in and says, your sons and daughters were eating a meal at your oldest boy's house, and a great wind blew the house down upon them, and they're all dead, and I alone escaped to tell you. Yes, life can take a 180-degree turn within the blink of an eye. You can be doing ordinary things on an ordinary day, and within a matter of moments, just like Job, you can be standing face to face with extraordinary challenges. In our program today, I'm going to be speaking with a man named Ronnie Pannell from Florence, Alabama. In addition to being a good friend, Ronnie has a captivating personal story about how the very fabric of his family was ripped asunder within a matter of moments, leaving Ronnie and his wife Kathy and other family members left to do the best they could to put the pieces of their lives back together. This is Ronnie's story. Thank you for joining us for our discussion today. It's a little bit different setup than we normally have. I'm usually on a couch with several guests, but this is kind of I suppose, a unique interview. I have with me Ronnie Pannell. Ronnie Pannell lives in the Florence, Alabama area. He is a member of the Jackson Heights Church of Christ, and he's very well known in that area and other parts of the country as well, because he's been involved in so many different aspects of so many people's lives. He is a history teacher at Mars Hill Bible School. He also teaches Bible classes there. And he's also known as a coach. He's coached virtually every sport you can think of that is associated with high school sporting, athletic events. And also, in addition to that, Ronnie is the sports announcer for the Mars Hill Panthers, and he has broadcast, been the announcer for over 1,200 games for Mars Hill for the basketball team. And so we're just glad to have him with us. Ronnie, thank you for being with us today. I appreciate you coming and sharing with us a story that I know is one that touches your heart in a very special way, as people are going to begin to realize as you tell the story. So I suppose we just need to go ahead and jump right in to the discussion today, and I want to give you the opportunity to tell us about June the 13th, 2005, going back a few years. But that's a day that I'm sure is just as real, just as in your mind. It's burned into your mind just as much as any other day, or more so, because of the events that took place on that day. Tell us about that day.
Well, you're right. June 13th, 2005 is almost a marking point in my life and the life of my family. We were blessed with 3 sons, John, Will, and Jeffrey. Kathy and I, everything was just the way life should be going, I suppose. And then on June 13th, 2005, Will died in a canoeing accident, drowned on Cypress Creek there in Florence. Kathy and I were about to leave to go on a vacation. We were going to visit our son and then end up in Disney World. We were going to be gone for more than a week. And I was in the carport area and cleaning out the back of my car, trying to figure out where I'm going to put luggage the next morning. And my youngest son, Jeffrey, was helping me when a good friend of ours, a longtime friend, Steve Pierce, and his wife, Sheila, came pulling up in our driveway with 2 other cars behind them. Steve had a very unusual look on his face. But we were longtime friends, and I thought he was just being Steve. But he got out of the car, and we knew that Will had gone to the creek to canoe. There'd been the remnants of a hurricane came through the Shoals area, and the water was up, and he wanted to go canoeing. And his mother said, "Please be careful." It's the last thing she got to tell him. And as Steve got out of the car, he looked at me and said, "Will." I looked at Sheila, she's shaking her head, and I looked back at Steve, and he said, "He drowned." And everything changed right there. The police were there, and actually a TVA policeman was also there. And so, talking about how quick things change, we had gone from cleaning out the back of our car to see where we were going to put luggage. When I finally collected myself and asked the policeman, "What do I need to do now?" he wanted to know which funeral home to use. So in a matter of 3 to 5 minutes, a trip, a joyous trip, no real worries or cares, and then everything changed.
That's a tragedy that perhaps few people can relate to, never having suffered the loss of a child. You know, typically as parents we think that we will go before our children will go. And then when these times do occur, such as the one that you've experienced and maybe some others who are watching today, I know there has to be such a great sense of loss and confusion. I can't even begin to imagine what that must be like and what it's still like for you and your family.
The way things unfolded, there was no need for us to go to the hospital. And so we did not see Will until the night of the funeral visitation. And once I saw him in the casket, all I could think and all I could say was, "Get up. Just get up." But that wasn't going to happen. And so it did. It started us on a journey that we're still on, that we're going to be on. It's going to be 10 years this coming June. And it's been difficult. It's been sad. There's been lonely times. There's times of question. We've had a lot of help. We've had a lot of comfort sent our way. A lot of friends and family members helping us. And so it does. It just changes the whole direction of your life. I think everything that happens, we talk about that was before Will died or after Will died.
Take just a moment and tell us something about your son you would like for us to know.
He's a middle child,
Okay.
stubborn. Often said, there's a song in the church songbook, "At last my stubborn will has yielded." And we laughed that maybe we'd sing that one day. But he was his own person. He could handle successes and failures about the same. He played a lot of ball. If they won, that was good. If they lost, hey, there'll be another game. Probably handled that better than I did. And So he was just his own person, and he was finding himself, and he was 24 years old when this accident occurred, and just a great guy.
Well, Ronnie, I know that part of the reason that you were willing to be here today and to share your story is certainly to honor him and his memory, but you know, looking at it from another perspective, maybe some are wondering why you would be willing to open yourself up in such a public fashion regarding such a sensitive subject.
I've been around teenagers all my life. I've coached since I was about 17 years old. And I've been around families. I was a youth minister for quite a while, and I've been around families who have lost children, and I knew they were hurting, and I hurt for them, but I did not know, and there's only one horrible way to know, the depth of that pain. And I know that there are other people. I know Will's not the last one that's going to die, a child, and so since his death, there's been unfortunately several occasions where friends or people that we know of, and having been in the school systems, we know of folks, and even at church, there's folks that have lost their children, and it's not the natural way. My dad would say, when you lose your parent, you lose your past, and when you lose a child, you lose the future. And he experienced that when I was 18, my little 9-year-old brother died. Yeah. And so Dad would help me. Mother and Dad were a great help to me and Kathy. Yeah. And so I want to help other people. I want to let them know they're not alone. That's the biggest thing. You feel so alone in this journey, but you're really not. Just at Jackson Heights, you sort of had the knowledge that this person lost a child. After we lost a child, I really began to look and count, and the number was incredible. 10 or 12 families that had lost a child, and there's been plenty others since then. And so,
well, Ronnie, I want to talk to you more about this, and I appreciate so much your willingness to come and to share your story with us today. And as those who are viewing the program can see, there are a number of things here on the table in front of me that have to do with Will and his life, and we appreciate you bringing these. And we're going to talk more about this, and I know you want to talk a little bit more to parents about the grieving process to maybe help some others who are watching the program. And so we're going to watch another segment together, and then we're going to come back, and then we're going to continue our discussion. Okay.
It was a cold, frigid evening on the streets of New York City on the evening of November 14th, 2012, and Officer Larry DePrimo was on patrol, and he was walking the streets of New York City as he always did, and he saw in the distance a man that was obviously homeless because he had raggedy clothes on and didn't have any shoes on, and he was leaning against the wall of a shoe store. And rather than charge him with loitering or indecent exposure because he didn't have any shoes on, Officer DePrimo offered to go into the shoe store and to buy him a pair of shoes. And so he went inside and he bought him a pair of size 12 all-weather boots and thermal socks because it was very cold outside. And so the officer went inside and he bought him the shoes and he bought him the thermal socks, and he went outside and he ordered the man to sit down. And the man sat down on the ground and he had his legs straight out, and the officer was kneeling down and he put the socks on his feet and he put the boots on his feet and told him, "God bless you and have a nice day." Over in the distance, a woman by the name of Jennifer Foster was watching the scene there, and she caught this on her cell phone camera. And she was so amazed by the act of the policeman of putting the socks and the boots on the man's feet. She had always portrayed a policeman as a cold man, that one that would write you up for anything, that would pull you over for going 1 mile over the speed limit, that was always looking for things bad and was never looking to do any good for anyone at all. And she caught this video on her camera, and she went home and she watched it 3 or 4 times over, and she decided that this was too good not to share with the rest of the world. And so she put it on her Facebook page, and many people began to watch it. Many people began to like it. And it is now it went viral at the time, and it got more than 500,000 likes on Facebook, all because one police officer decided to help a homeless man on the side of the road and give him a pair of socks and a pair of boots. Just a simple act of compassion let the whole world know that there are still good people in the world that care about others. If you were to look at the ministry of Jesus Christ, you would see that compassion was a main theme. There are many passages in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that explain to us that when Jesus saw this person, or when Jesus saw this crowd or this group of people, that He was moved with compassion for them. In the book of Luke chapter 10, beginning in verse 25 and going through verse 37, Jesus devotes an entire story to the principle of compassion. He tells about a man, a good Samaritan, that came along the road, and he saw a man that was beaten up. And he put him on the back of his donkey, and he took him to an inn, and he took care of him there. And he told the innkeeper, "Whatever I owe, whatever this man's bill is, give it to me, and I will pay it." You see, Jesus was very compassionate in His ministry. And young people, if Jesus was compassionate in His ministry, if He was compassionate in His earthly life, so should we be compassionate. In the book of Lamentations, chapter 3 and verse 22, the Bible explains that the Lord's mercies are new every morning, basically meaning that God has compassion on us every single day. I find it very interesting that in the New Testament, the Greek word for compassion is used 12 times. One time it's used in relation in this story in Luke chapter 10, but the other 11 is used to refer to God's compassion on us for saving us as sinners. And if God is compassionate toward us and saving us from sin, so should we in our everyday lives be compassionate to one another and to those that need the saving message of Jesus. The Apostle Paul would write in the book of Ephesians, chapter 4 and verse 32, he says that you be tender-hearted, forgiving one another. Be compassionate to one another, just as God in Christ forgave you. May we take the example of Larry DePrimo, finding a homeless man and just buying him a pair of shoes. It doesn't have to be anything extravagant. It doesn't have to be anything out of this world, but maybe something small. A small act of compassion can change the world for good. May we always be like the earthly Jesus and have compassion for our fellow man.
Well, we're back with Ronnie Pannell from Florence, Alabama. He's sharing with us a story. It's a very sad story about he and his family's struggle after the loss, an untimely death of their middle child, their son Will. And Ronnie, thank you again for sharing with us some thoughts today. And I want to ask you this question. What are some things that have helped your family to cope with something that's been such a great loss? I mean, you've lost a son, and your other children have lost a sibling. Your parents lost a grandchild, and we could go on and on. So many connections that were lost when Will passed away.
The first thing would be, you don't have to do this alone. There's help. And there's help in your community. There's all sorts of different groups. In Florence, there's a group called Day by Day. The larger national group is called Compassionate Friends. Day by Day has monthly meetings, and you go in, and if you want to talk, you can talk. If you don't want to talk, you don't. And if you want to cry, you can cry. And if you want to share laughs, you can. The biggest thing, parents, I believe, you don't want your child forgotten. You want that child to be remembered. And we have, with Day by Day, we have an annual balloon release that's very special. And we have a candlelight service in December where we take time to remember our child in a very special way. I ran across something years ago, and it was a story of a woman on a boat. and on the Great Lakes, and she was going to see one of her children, and a storm came up. And the boat was tossed, and people were scared, and yet this woman just sat calmly. And when the storm eased up and they made it safely, some went to her and said, "How could you just be so calm during that horrible storm?" And she said, "Well, you see, I had a child in Cleveland, and I've got a child in heaven. And I knew I was going to see one of them today, and it didn't matter to me which one it was." It's really had a different perspective about death.
I know there's a passage of Scripture that you had mentioned to me before we began our program that's meant a lot to you that I think kind of ties into your story. Would you like to share that?
Well, it comes out of 2 Samuel, and it's a very well-known verse, chapter 18, verse 33, and where King said, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, would God I had died for thee." And Barry, I would have easily swapped places with Will. There would have not been a second thought. And the pain and the difficulty that has come over the last several years now, sometimes that's almost unbearable.
Yeah.
I don't know what death does to you, but I know what heartache does to you. And so, you know, that's one of many verses that really strike home.
Well, the truth of the matter is, most people watching this program are never going to lose a child, but it does happen. Right. But most people watching this program are probably going to know someone or have a family member who does lose a child.
Right.
And, you know, as friends and family, we want to be a help to others who are going through these kind of difficult things in their life. And I'm sure that you've had many who've tried to reach out to you over the years, and especially around the time of the events, to try and be a help and encouragement. But you know, sometimes in trying to help, we don't always do the right thing, do we? What are some things that come to mind as far as advice you could give to someone who wants to be a help to someone who's lost a child?
Within the few days of the death, just be there. We had dear friends who took the car and got it washed. We had people bringing in paper plates and napkins and soft drinks along with a lot of food. And so there's a whole lot of things like that can be done. Down the road, remember my child. Don't forget my child. And a lot of memorials, and you mentioned some of the things on the table here.
Yeah, a number of
Christmas ornaments. Friends have told me that they have purchased. Will was our Auburn fan. The rest of us Alabama, and we had some spirited discussions, believe me. But we have Auburn ornaments on our Christmas tree, and we have things pertaining to Auburn. You know.
And I think that's a mistake that sometimes people go through when they have a loss in their life. They want to, at least initially, put that person out of mind because of the hurt that's there.
Well, I can see that, but please don't. If there's someone you know and they've lost a child, ask them. Talk to them about that child. And they'll probably open up. If they don't want to open up, they won't. But give them that opportunity. There's all sorts of memorials you can do in the community in memory of a particular person. So there's a lot of things, and every one of them's always been very special.
Well, Ronnie, our time just goes by so fast when we've got a guest like you, especially talking about such an intriguing, interesting topic of losing someone we love. You know, sometimes I think that people have the idea that if you're a Christian, you don't ever get angry about life. You don't get angry with God. You just have a smile on your face and go through life. Is that the way that you understand it should be, or God expects us to be, or?
I believe God's a big God, and He can handle a lot of questions. I sure hope so, because I've asked a lot of questions. The biggest one is why? Why did this have to happen? And I don't know the answer, and will not know the answer in this lifetime. But it's a process you have to go through. I mean, we could talk about stages of grief and things of that nature, and there are different things. You know, you're angry, you're upset, you're in shock, but then at some point you have to accept it and try to keep going. And so I think God understands. God lost his son.
He knows what that's like.
God understands the pain of losing a child.
Ronnie, I want to thank you again for sharing your story with us. There's so much more I know you could share, and I know you're willing to talk to anyone who's struggling with this. If someone wanted to contact you about going through this process, you've been there, and just thank you so much. Appreciate you and your family, what you mean to so many people, the encouragement you are to others who are going through difficult times in their life, and just want to thank you for being here.
Thank you for letting me do this.
The Apostle James wrote, "Go to now, ye that say, today or tomorrow we will go into such a city and continue there a year and buy and sell and get gain. Whereas you know not what shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a short time and then vanishes away." James chapter 4, verse 13 through 14. Oh, life is a precious gift, isn't it? And life with our family is one of the most prized gifts that God has given to us. You know, sometimes we get so busy with the hustle and bustle of the urgent things in life that we really forget about the important things, forgetting that some of the most important blessings are not those possessions that have a monetary value, but rather those people with whom we share a common last name, our family. I hope you'll take time today to tell your spouse that you love them and that you appreciate them. And I hope you'll take opportunity before the day is over to spend some time with your kids and enjoy every moment you have, because life can turn on a dime. And as our guest, Ronnie Pannell, has shared with us today, loved ones can be gone within the blink of an eye. Family is important, and that's what this program is all about. We want to uplift the family, guide the family, and protect the family through a better understanding of the Word of God. We hope you'll be with us next week as we explore another family topic from a biblical perspective. Until then, I'm Barry Gilreath Jr., your host, wishing you and yours a blessed week.